and welcome to Ask GMBN Tech, the show where you get to ask us any question you like by using hashtag Ask GMBN Tech down in the comments of any of our videos so we can pick it up. And well, I believe you've got the first one now.
I have. Question number one comes from Critch95. Can you fill inner tubes with sealant? Would it be worth it?
I think I could answer that straight away. Well, what do you reckon?
You can. It's going to be heavier. I guess you're keeping the mess within a tube.
I get what he's doing.
Until you get a puncture, and then the mess is going to be inside the tyre and
your tube.
Slime. Do you remember slime? That was a thing. We could buy. You still can buy a fully sort of a tube that's already got the sealant within it. So it is possible. But I don't see any benefits when tubeless is now so simple to set up that I would just rather stick to tubeless. Or, if you don't fancy it, just stick with the regular inner tube. But I know where I would put my vote, to be fair. Yeah,
you either want to be clean with a tube or you want the ease of sealing. I mean, at least if something goes wrong, you're probably just going to use a jabby kind of tubeless repair kit and not have to take out your wheel or anything. That's the whole benefit of tubeless. But if you get a puncture and the sealant's not sealing it, you're still going to have to take your tube out.
Yeah, presumably you could do this yourself. You take out your valve core and squeeze in some sealant into your tube if you wanted, but yeah, I don't see the sort of real reason to it. I can't remember the last time I had to take my tyre off to fix a rip in the tyre. The amount of times I've just plugged it, trimmed it and cracked on, you know, for me that is the easiest way of doing it, to be honest.
Well, if you do bodge something with some sealant in an inner tube, we want to know about it. Use hashtag AskGMBNTech and tell us about it, or upload it to Top Mods and we'll talk about it in a show. Okay, my question is from CXCXCCCCC, and he says, does seat angle change when riding a full suspension bike? Yes, potentially. There's a lot of factors relating to this. So obviously, when you sit on a bike, your suspension sags into its travel. But on a full suspension, if your suspension is balanced, you should sag into both your forks and your rear suspension quite evenly. So a full suspension bike should just sort of go down and shouldn't affect the seat angle too much, although it might a little bit, especially when you start to move and sag in or use more of your travel. But I would say when you're really moving into your travel, it's not usually when you're seated, is it? It's usually when you're out of the pedals, out the saddle, on the pedals, or descending, in which case you're not going to be sat down, and seat tube angle only matters when you sat down, really, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Also, I think that bike designers will think about this when they're designing bikes. They certainly think about it in hardtails, because obviously your seat angle will change on a hardtail as well. You'll sag into your forks and everything will not slacken, the opposite of is sharpen up. Steepen, that's it. Everything will steepen up. And usually in a hardtail geometry chart, you do actually see those adjustments. So they'll say seat angle normally and seat angle under sag, basically, when your forks sag in.
Nukeproof used to have it, they call it dynamic seat tube angle. So when you were sagged on the bike, what that did, obviously it wasn't a huge amount. One thing I've noticed, particularly on my e-bike, where I've been challenging myself on really steep climbs, obviously, because your weight is going to the back, you're sagging more. So what I've done is lock out my rear shock, and that effectively gives you a higher BB, but also a steeper seat angle, and also keeps your actual seat angle like that. So you can sit on the nose of it. So there's a climb near me, which I've only cleaned once. But if I don't lock the rear shock, everything tips back, including the seat, which makes it really hard to sit on the nose of it. So that is one kind of dynamic seat angle, where actually it's not just a seat tube angle, but actually a seat angle that makes it easier to climb. But there aren't many occasions where you need to think about it, I suppose.
No, but it's a good point. Dynamic, like your seat angle is something that's going to be dynamic depending on where you're sat on it. And also your virtual seat angle can change when you move your saddle forward and back on the rail as well anyway. So yes, it does change is the answer, but I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Next question from Winkler Tribe, 5268.
Great name.
I have 26-inch non-boost wheel set on my older single-speed hardtail. Can I keep the hubs and replace them to 27.5 wheels? Well, possibly, it depends. Are you trying to fit the 27.5 wheels to that older hardtail? And it's not a definite no. I'd say it's a maybe. I did do this in the early days. well, half did this on the early days. I think it was a Santa Cruz Bronson where I couldn't get the right fork in time. So that was a 27.5 frame, but I only had a 26 fork, and luckily it just about fit. So it depends on how much tyre clearance you have on your bike. If it's an older bike from 2012, I would probably think the tyre clearance isn't that great, so it might be a tight squeeze, especially if it even depends on the tyre. The brand of tyre is actually, and how much tyre tread you have on there, can actually make quite a big difference to how deep that sort of tyre is as well. So you can definitely keep the hubs and you can definitely relace a new rim on there, absolutely fine, but whether or not that's going to fit the bike it's already on, it's hard to answer. It might do is the answer, basically.
And you've got a circa 2012 frame, so is it boost or is it standard? Because your hub spacing might change too. So a lot of factors to think about there. I think if you've got a wheel that you can try it in, you want to be looking for about 25 mil of clearance in your frame to make sure that tyre isn't rubbing or bottoming out when things get riding. Okay, my question is from Oscar Saxland, who says, is there much of a difference between downhill bike and trail or enduro bike sizing? I have a Polygon Siskiyou in small and a Specialized Demo in small as well. And the Polygon fits me perfectly, but the Demo feels like way too much bike. Am I on the wrong size bike? Probably not. Now, I don't know what models you specifically got or what year your bikes are, but I assumed that they were both 2022, and I had a look at the geometry of both your Siskiyou and the Demo, and funnily enough the reach is actually really close. So in terms of fit, when you're stood up on the bike, it should fit you the same. However, because a Demo is a downhill bike, it is going to be designed very differently. So the wheelbase is 111 millimeters longer than your Siskiyou. The chainstays are 11 mil longer. The BB is 19 mil higher. I mean, all of these are going to make you feel like you're on a massive bike, aren't they?
Yeah, I would say most brands sort of stick to a reach size, probably 4 sizes across models, roughly speaking.
Yeah.
But obviously you've got more travel and you've probably got a slacker head angle, so that adds up to wheels being further apart because you've got more going on.
Exactly.
But you kind of want it to feel safe. Having said that, I do like my downhill bike to have a bit more room on it, a bit more reach for me to move around. And if the longer wheelbase is and the slacker head angle is going to make it feel more stable at speed, which is kind of what you're after. So some people, like myself, probably size up a little bit on a downhill bike. And like I say, you know, with a lot of suspension and a similar reach, it might feel a little bit cramped when the speeds go up, I would say, on a downhill bike.
Well, Oscar says that it feels like too much bike on the trail, so it's almost like it's too big. And, you know, if that bike is also a 29er, whereas your Siskiyou is usually a 27.5, that's going to make it feel like big on the trail as well. So if the bike feels too big for you, the Demo on trails, and you're usually riding trail and enduro, maybe it's just that you need a trail and enduro bike to ride on rather than a downhill bike.
Next question is from Alexis Froilenews Bio, some great name. Is any remedy to install a SRAM XX T-type to a non-UDH frame without altering the frame?
Whoa.
SRAM is going to say no.
Absolutely not.
However, it seems there's, you know, these aftermarket people are getting very clever. So 5Dev have built this thing. Is it for Yeti bikes?
It's specifically for Yeti bikes.
So
yeah.
Obviously with the transmission, you basically take off your UDH, which has a mount to your bike, which is specific for that UDH. So you take that off, and then you have the specific mount for that transmission rear mount to bolt to. So you just don't have that. If you don't have a UDH, you've got basically a completely different mount on your frame. So luckily we have these sort of third parties getting involved doing this for certain frames, but the kind of answer is probably not. Depending on what frame you've got, you're going to find this very difficult, I think.
Yeah, because the derailleur effectively hugs the frame, doesn't it, from either side. And so if your frame isn't designed to be hugged by a derailleur, there's nowhere to go. But these mods are basically extending an axle and using a bunch of spacers to kind of fake getting that SRAM Eagle transmission derail it in there, but it's not like been tested. It will void your warranty if you try and use this with a new Eagle transmission. So I guess you got to ask, like, how much do you really want it? There are some brands out there that are kind of trying to help you, like Deviate. Instead, they've updated to UDH, so you could have the new Eagle transmission, but they understand that not everyone can afford a new frame, so they're selling just the rear triangles. So check out the brand that you are using at the moment, see if they've got any mods or new rear triangles that you can use instead.
So UDH, I guess, I thought it's a brilliant system, so we're making this standard so everyone in their toolbox can have a spare one of these. The more cynical people might say, oh, that was all their plan all the way along, to make this system just for their own mechs, which I'm not sure I completely agree with. I think it's great to have a mech hanger that everyone has, but you could still get a GX Eagle Axis rear mech that mounts to your normal hanger anyway, so if you wanted to go down the electronic shifting route.
Final question here, last but by no means least, Airsoft Hunter. Well, we know what he does in his spare time. I have recently ran into an issue after purchasing a used mountain bike. I noticed when replacing the rear pads that they are not fully covered by the surface, covering the surface of the rotor. It looks like the pads are wider than the rotor. I'm gonna, without seeing a picture, I really wish we could submit pictures into comments, but I reckon that maybe your caliper is not aligned to your disc, and this will probably be an issue with the adapter. So if I just use forks as an example, on your forks you may have an adapter where your caliper is mounted to those forks with an adapter, and that basically sizes up your to get your caliper in line with the size of the rotor. So if the forks are a 160 as standard, you put an adapter on to get it up to 180 so that your caliper is in the right place to fit on a 180 disc. Now, if you don't get the right adapter, if it's too big for the disc, it will put the caliper in the wrong place and it will just hover above the disc. Or, and I've seen this a couple of times before, the adapters are actually directional. There will be a triangle with a little like arrow that points to up. And if you've got it the wrong way round, that can also put your caliper slightly out on the disc, even if it's the right adapter for your disc rotor size. So I would look into that, have a good look, or take it to a local bike shop so that they can see it in person, because we can't hear in that.
I've seen it bodged before with almost the right adapter, but not quite, just to get going. Or you don't know, maybe they've fitted a different size rotor. Particularly from 200 to 203, that will make quite a big difference. If you look down your caliper, the disc should match exactly on the pads. If there's any pad hanging over, obviously once it wears in, you'll get a groove. It's a surefire sign that it's not correct. Something is mismatched on that bike.
But that's possibly a £10 to £20 fix, so do take it to a bike shop and have a look. Anyway, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have any burning questions right now, use hashtag Ask GMBN Tech down in the comments right now, and we'll try and answer it on a Monday show like this. Thank you for watching.